This lesson has nothing whatsoever to do with religion in any form, nor with sectarianism, nor have any of the other lessons of this course on the law of success. When you have mastered these 15 laws and made them your own, as you may do within a period of from 15 to 30 weeks, you will be ready to develop sufficient personal power to ensure the attainment of your definite chief aim. The purpose of these 15 laws is to develop or help you organize all the knowledge you have and all you acquire in the future, so you may turn this knowledge into power. You should read the Law of Success course with a notebook by your side, for you will observe that ideas will begin to flash into your mind as you read, as to ways and means of using these laws in advancing your own interests. You should also begin teaching these laws to those in whom you are most interested, as it is a well-known fact that the more one tries to teach a subject, the more he learns about that subject. A man who has a family of young boys and girls may so indelibly fix these 15 laws of success in their minds that this teaching will change the entire course of their lives. The man with a family should interest his wife in studying this course with him, for reasons which will be plain before you complete reading this introduction. Power is one of the three basic objects of human endeavor. Power is of two classes, that which is developed through coordination of natural physical laws and that which is developed by organizing and classifying knowledge. Power growing out of organized knowledge is the more important because it places in man's possession a tool with which he may transform, redirect, and to some extent harness and use the other form of power. The object of this reading course is to mark the route by which the student may safely travel in gathering such facts as he may wish to weave into his fabric of knowledge. There are two major methods of gathering knowledge, namely by studying, classifying, and assimilating facts which have been organized by other people, and through one's own process of gathering, organizing, and classifying facts, generally called personal experience. This lesson deals mainly with the ways and means of studying the facts and data gathered and classified by other people. The state of advancement known as civilization is but the measure of knowledge which the race has accumulated. This knowledge is of two classes, mental and physical. Among the useful knowledge organized by man, he has discovered and cataloged the 80-odd physical elements of which all material forms in the universe consists. By study and analysis and accurate measurements, man has discovered the bigness of the material side of the universe as represented by planets, suns, and stars, some of which are known to be over 10 million times as large as the little earth on which he lives. On the other hand, man has discovered the littleness of the physical forms which constitute the universe by reducing the 80-odd physical elements to molecules, atoms, and finally to the smallest particle, the electron. An electron cannot be seen. It is but a center of force consisting of a positive or a negative. The electron is the beginning of everything of a physical nature. Molecules, atoms, and electrons, to understand both the detail and the perspective of the process through which knowledge is gathered, organized, and classified, it seems essential for the student to begin with the smallest and simplest particles of physical matter, because these are the ABCs with which nature has constructed the entire framework of the physical portion of the universe. The molecule consists of atoms, which are said to be little invisible particles of matter revolving continuously with the speed of lightning, on exactly the same principle that the earth revolves around the sun. These little particles of matter, known as atoms, which revolve in one continuous circuit in the molecule, are said to be made up of electrons, the smallest particles of physical matter. As already stated, the electron is nothing but two forms of force. The electron is uniform, of but one class, size, and nature. Thus, in a grain of sand or a drop of water, the entire principle upon which the whole universe operates is duplicated. How marvelous, how stupendous! You may gather some slight idea of the magnitude of it all the next time you eat a meal by remembering that every article of food you eat, the plate on which you eat it, the tableware and the table itself are, in final analysis, but a collection of electrons. In the world of physical matter, whether one is looking at the largest star that floats through the heavens or the smallest grain of sand to be found on Earth, the object under observation is but an organized collection of molecules, atoms, and electrons revolving around one another at inconceivable speed. Every particle of physical matter is in a continuous state of highly agitated motion. Nothing is ever still, although nearly all possible matter may appear to the physical eye to be motionless. There is no solid physical matter. The hardest piece of steel is but an organized mass of revolving molecules, atoms, and electrons. Moreover, the electrons in a piece of steel are at the same nature and move at the same rate of speed as the electrons in gold, silver, brass, or pewter. The 80-odd forms of physical matter appear to be different from one another, and they are different because they are made up of different combinations of atoms, although the electrons in these atoms are always the same, except that some electrons are positive and some are negative, meaning that some carry a positive charge of electrification while others carry a negative charge. Through the science of chemistry, matter may be broken up into atoms which are within themselves unchangeable. The 80-odd elements are created through and by reason of combining and changing of the positions of the atoms. To illustrate the modus operandi of chemistry through which this change of atomic position is wrought in terms of modern science, add 4 electrons, 2 positive and 2 negative, to the hydrogen atom, and you have the element lithium. Knock out of the lithium atom, composed of 3 positive and 3 negative electrons, 1 positive and 1 negative electron, and you have 1 atom of helium, which is composed of 2 positive and 2 negative electrons. Thus it may be seen that the 80-odd physical elements of the universe differ from one another only in the number of electrons composing their atoms, and the number and arrangement of those atoms in the molecules of each element. As an illustration, an atom of mercury contains 80 positive charges or electrons in its nucleus, and 80 negative outline charges or electrons. If the chemist were to expel 2 of its positive electrons, it would instantly become the metal known as platinum. If the chemist could then go a step further and take from it a negative electron, the mercury atom would then have lost 2 positive electrons and 1 negative. That is, 1 positive charge on the whole. Hence, it would retain 79 positive charges in the nucleus and 79 outline negative elements, thereby becoming gold. The formula through which this electronic change might be produced has been the object of diligent search by the alchemists all down the ages, and by the modern chemists of today. It is a fact known to every chemist that literally tens of thousands of synthetic substances may be composed out of only 4 kinds of atoms: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. Differences in the number of electrons in atoms confer upon them qualitative chemical differences, though all atoms of any one element are chemically alike. Differences in the number and spatial arrangement of these atoms in groups of molecules constitute both physical and chemical differences in substance, i.e. in compounds. Quite different substances are produced by combinations of precisely the same kind of atoms, but in different proportions. Take from a molecule of certain substance 1 single atom, and they may be changed from a compound necessary to life and growth into a deadly poison. Phosphorus is an example, and thus contains but 1 kind of atom, but some phosphorus is yellow and some is red, varying with the spatial distribution of the atom in the molecules composing the phosphorus. It may be stated as a literal truth that the atom is the universal particle with which nature builds all material forms, from a grain of sand to the largest star that floats through space. The atom is nature's building block, out of which she erects an oak tree or a pine, a rock of sandstone or granite, a mouse or an elephant. Some of the ablest thinkers have reasoned that the earth on which we live and every material particle on the earth began with two atoms which attached themselves to each other and through hundreds of millions of years of flight through space kept contacting and accumulating other atoms until step by step the earth was formed. This, they point out, would account for the various and differing strata of the Earth's substance, such as the coal beds, the iron ore deposits, the gold and silver deposits, the copper deposits, etc. They reason that, as the Earth ruled through the space, it contacted groups of various kinds of nebula, or atoms, which it promptly appropriated through the law of magnetic attraction. There is much to be seen in the Earth's surface composition to support this theory, although there may be no positive evidence of its soundness. These facts concerning the smallest and analyzable particles of matter have been briefly referred to as a starting point from which we shall undertake to ascertain how to develop and apply the law of power. It has been noticed that all matter is in a constant state of vibration or motion, that the molecule is made up of rapidly moving particles called atoms, which in turn are made up of rapidly moving particles called electrons. The vibrating fluid of matter in every particle of matter there is an invisible fluid or force which causes the atoms to circle around one another at an inconceivable rate of speed. This fluid is a form of energy which has never been analyzed. Thus far it has baffled the entire scientific world. But many scientists believe to be the same energy as that which we call electricity. Others prefer to call it vibration. It is believed by some investigators that the rate of speed with which this force, call it whatever you will, moves determines to a large extent the nature of the outward visible appearance of the physical objects of the universe. One rate of vibration of this fluid energy causes what is known as sound. The human ear can detect only the sound which is produced through from 32,000 to 38,000 vibrations a second. As the rate of vibrations per second increases above that, which we call sound, they begin to manifest themselves in the form of heat. Heat begins with about 1,500,000 vibrations per second. Still higher up the scale, vibrations begin to register in the form of light. 3 million vibrations per second create violet light. Above this number, vibration sheds ultraviolet rays, which are invisible to the naked eye, and other invisible radiation. And still higher up the scale, just how high no one at present seems to know, vibrations create the power with which man thinks. It is the belief of the author that the fluid portion of all vibration, out of which grow all known forms of energy, is universal in nature, that the fluid portion of sound is the same as the fluid portion of light. The difference in effect between sound and light being only a difference in the rate of vibration. Also that the fluid portion of thought is exactly the same as that in sound, heat, and light, excepting the number of vibrations per second. Just as there is but one form of physical matter, of which the Earth and all the other planets, suns, and stars are composed, the electron so is there but one form of fluid energy, which causes all matter to remain in a constant state of rapid motion. Air and ether. The vast space between the suns, moons, stars, and other planets of the universe is filled with a form of energy known as ether. It is this author's belief that the fluid energy which keeps all particles of matter in motion is the same as the universal fluid, known as ether, which fills all the space of the universe. Within a certain distance of the Earth's surface, estimated by some to be about 50 miles, there exists what is called air, which is a gaseous substance composed of oxygen and nitrogen. Air is a conductor of sound vibrations, but a non-conductor of light and higher vibrations, which are carried by the ether. The ether is a conductor of all vibrations from sound to thought. Air is a localized substance which performs, in the main, the service of feeding all animals and plant life with oxygen and nitrogen, without which neither could exist. Nitrogen is one of the chief necessities of plant life, and oxygen one of the mainstreams of animal life. Near the top of very high mountains, the air becomes very light because it contains but little nitrogen, which is the reason why plant life cannot exist there. On the other hand, the light air found in high altitude consists largely of oxygen, which is the chief reason why tuberculosis patients are sent to high altitude. Even this brief statement concerning molecules, atoms, electrons, air, ether, and the like may be heavy reading to the student, but as will be seen shortly, this introduction plays an essential part as the foundation of this lesson. Do not become discouraged if the description of this foundation appears to have none of the thrilling effects of the modern tale of fiction. You are seriously engaged in finding out what your available powers and how to organize and apply these powers. To complete this discovery successfully, you must combine determination, persistency, and a well-defined desire to gather and organize knowledge. The late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone and one of the accepted authorities on the subject of vibration, is here introduced in support of this author's theories concerning the subject of vibration. Suppose you have the power to make an iron rod vibrate with any desired frequency in a dark room. At first, when vibrating slowly, its movement will be indicated by only one sense, that of touch. As soon as the vibrations increase, a low sound will emanate from it, and it will appeal to two senses. At about 32,000 vibrations to the second, the sound will be loud and shrill. But at 40,000 vibrations, it will be silent, and the movements of the rod will not be perceived by touch. Its movements will be perceived by no ordinary human sense. From this point up to about 1,500,000 vibrations per second, we have no sense that can appreciate any effect on the intervening vibrations. After that stage is reached, movement is indicated first by the sense of temperature, and then, when the rod becomes red hot, by the sense of sight. At 3 million vibrations, it sheds violet light. Above that, it sheds ultraviolet rays and other invisible radiation, some of which can be perceived by instruments and employed by us. Now it has occurred to me that there must be a great deal to be learned about the effect of those vibrations in the great gap where the ordinary human senses are unable to hear, see, or feel the movement. The power to send wireless messages by ether vibrations lies in that gap. But the gap is so great that it seems that there must be much more. You must make machines practically to supply new senses as the wireless instruments do. Can it be said, when you think of that great gap, that there are not many forms of vibrations that may give us results as wonderful as, or even more wonderful than, the wireless waves? It seems to me that in this gap lie the vibrations which we have assumed to be given off by our brains and nerve cells when we think. But then again, they may be higher up, in the scale beyond the vibrations that produce the ultraviolet rays. Author's note: the last sentence suggests the theory held by the author. Do we need a wire to carry these vibrations? Will they not pass through the ether without a wire, just as the wireless waves do? How will they be perceived by the recipient? Will he hear a series of signals, or will he find that another man's thoughts have entered into his brains? We may indulge in some speculations based on what we know of the wireless waves, which, as I have said, are all we can recognize of the vast series of vibrations which theoretically must exist. If the thought waves are similar to the wireless waves, they must pass from the brain and flow endlessly around the world and the universe. The body and the skull and the other solid obstacles would form no obstruction to their passage, as they pass through the ether which surrounds the molecules of every substance, no matter how solid and dense. You ask if there would not be constant interfering and confusion if other people's thoughts were flowing through our brains and setting up thoughts in them that did not originate with ourselves. How do you know that other men's thoughts are not interfering with yours now? I have noticed a good many phenomena of mind disturbances that I have never been able to explain. For instance, there is the inspiration or the discouragement that a speaker feels in addressing an audience. I have experienced this many times in my life and have never been able to define exactly the physical causes behind it. Many recent scientific discoveries, in my opinion, point to a day not far distant perhaps when men will read another man's thoughts, when thoughts will be conveyed directly from brain to brain without intervention of speech, writing, or any of the present known methods of communication.